Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another ARPneuro Q&A show. My name is Jake, and I'm also with Colin in Matt's presence. Colin, it's great to see you again, bud.
Yeah, what's going on, Jake?
Good, man. How you doing?
Can't complain. Can't complain. I'm excited for this one. I know we were just talking, at least on the East Coast, there's a little bug going around, it seems like. I know my parents are sick. Matt's a little under the weather, so.
Yeah, which is why he's not here with us. I just got off the phone with him, and I told him, like, this is something it'll be good for him to watch and possibly do, because we know he has the technology. It's very helpful. If you do have the PRS, you can administer this as well. It also works with the RX, obviously. So we'll kind of go into that. And then, along with that technology, what you'll notice is that there's other things that you can perform with it. So anybody who has any questions, feel free. If you're joining live, we have that comment section. Make sure you can certainly do that. If you're on any of our social media, we try to watch that as well. And you can reach out to us at info@arpneuro.com. So thanks for everyone joining in live, and make sure you check out our website. It'll give you a lot of insight as to how our technology works, and of course the feedback from athletes and of course other patients on their success stories as well. And maybe Colin can share his down the road in this, as if he wants to, as we go on into this. All right, Sinus protocol. And Colin, I agree with you. I think a lot of this has been going on even still. I'm in Florida, and we had some friends down here from Chicago, and they got sick down here. So it's happening. Yeah, 100%. All right, so Sinus protocol. Let's jump right into this, and I want to get into sort of the nuts and bolts right away. Simply, how does it work? And essentially, it's using our direct current technology to our advantage. And I'm sure I probably sound like a broken record when I go back to this, but this truly is one of the reasons why we're able to do and why it's so successful. Of course, that RC circuit is one of the reasons why it is more harmonious with the brain. So it's a different type of direct current. So those of you not familiar with this is not like Russian stim. It is on a completely more advanced level. So as you can see here, when you put a black pad on someone's forearm and a red pad on somebody else's forearm, you can turn that current, and you can essentially dial that current all the way to the top, and you're essentially going to feel absolutely nothing. However, once you make connection, as you can see here, then there's fireworks. Essentially with direct current, when you have two separate pads from two separate people and you actually connect the hands, that completes the circuit. So whatever the output power is at, as you move the hands around, whether it's to the knuckles or wherever you're going, even wrist, that will change where that current is going to hit. And what you'll notice is sometimes where you're feeling it more intense as the one giving or administering the therapy, it may be less intense for that patient, but when you hit certain hot spots, they're going to feel it more than you, because that breakdown point is going to react differently. And I can explain it all day. It's not until you test it out. So all I'm going to say, here's the challenge before we continue on. If you do have a PRS, I highly encourage you to try this therapy, because there is a lot of cool things you can do with it, especially if you have a significant other that you can work it with. All right, so because of that technology, this is how we kind of use that to our advantage when it comes to Sinus protocol. So very easy setup. We're using just the one circuit, which is one of the reasons why the PRS does so well with it. So you only need the 2-lead system. If you're using the RX, you just have to use one of the cables that's split off into 2 leads. And the black lead will go on the back of the patient's neck, just below the hairline. And of course, that red lead will go on the forearm. I've heard it done different ways. Let me explain to you why I like it this way. So on a normal polarity, the black runs to the red. So when you look at how the therapy is being administered, the patient is shooting therapy to the technician or the doctor. And essentially what you're doing is the current is coming back and shooting back to the patient through their fingers or wherever their touch is at. So to me, it just makes more sense to start with the patient, because it's shooting back to the doctor, who is now transferring that energy back to certain pressure points with that patient. So that's one of the reasons that I kind of put it that way. Will it work the other way? Certainly. I've done it the other way as well. I just personally like it on this setup more. Now, as you can see, I have something there. It's ultrasound gel, and you may be asking, why in the world is there ultrasound gel in this? It just helps the connection better. So if you don't have access to ultrasound gel, under a pinch, I've used certain types of oils. I've even used, believe it or not, olive oil at one point just to have some sort of use water. It just doesn't work as well. Ultrasound gel, I have found, is the best option for the connection on this. So essentially, all you're going to do is you're going to get some ultrasound gel on their face and on your hands. So when you're going over those pressure points, it actually gives you the best value of that current. On that setup, so with the PRS, it's going to be very easy. It's sort of a plug and play and you're done. With the RX, essentially the same thing, so if you're a doctor and you have the RX and you're working this, you're staying with all the basic presets. So as you can see here, it's on normal polarity, 500 pulses per second, normal duty cycle of a continuous cycle. And then, of course, setting it to 20 minutes. However, what you'll find, as we get into later slides, you'll discover that, I recommend between 5 minutes and 20 minutes, essentially because I have seen success in 5 minutes. I treated some friends and within 5 minutes, they're blowing their nose and that was it. Sometimes you might want to come back for a second treatment after that. Perfectly okay. But it doesn't take long for this to actually take effect. So, and as you can see here on this output power, it's low numbers. This is literal 1 to 3 on that output power. They're usually not very high. Doesn't have to be high because as you can see, when we go over those pressure points, it's going to be pretty sensitive in certain areas. So there's no need to go up to as much as they can tolerate, or you're going to kind of rock them off the table. Not necessary. So we're going into the next one. Let's see. Before we continue on with this one, I do have a quick question because this seems to follow into this. So do you put the black lead on you or the person you are treating? So if you missed it, because I said that in the beginning, but you might have missed it as you were coming in, which is a great question. I do like to have the black lead on the patient and the red lead on the person that's doing the treatment. So again, the black running to the doctor and the doctor transferring it back to the patient. Like I said, you can reverse that, but I found the success on my end was a lot better running at that where that black lead actually starts with the patient. All right. So as you can see here, pretty easy layout. So again, that hands, that being the treatment, the technician or the doctor who's doing the administering, and the patient would have a black lead on the back of their neck. As you can see, they're either in a supine position, something just relaxing, and that's all they do. They just rest. And you're going to basically focus on these major pressure points, the frontal, the ethmoid, and the maxillary sinus. Certain bone structure just kind of rests in those positions. So essentially like this, you're going to place those fingers on that frontal, whichever you want with, whatever fingers you want to use. I have big hands, so I try not to put my entire hand over a small patient's face. So just be aware of that. But then you're just holding it there and, between, 5 and 30 seconds. And all you're essentially doing is you're essentially just rotating from the frontal to the ethmoid to the maxillary. Frontal, ethmoid, maxillary. And if you want to reverse that, however order you want to do it is perfectly okay. It's just a matter of just keeping consistency. And what you'll notice as you continue to go through it, that will start to break the sinuses up. It's, of course, contracting the muscles around there. And being super thin, you'll be surprised on how quickly that releases and clears out the sinuses. I got to ask you a question, Colin. So you haven't done it a lot. Have you ever felt this one?
I've done it on myself a few times. I feel like it's probably a little different when someone else is doing it to you. Just because, you're feeling it in your fingers, you feel it in your face, right? So it's kind of an overwhelming sensation right here. Yeah, but I have done it to a few people just in different demos and things like that, and everyone seems to enjoy it. Like most things with ARPneuro, it works, which is great. So, yeah, I've definitely got to explore this a little bit more. Thankfully, I haven't had any sinus issues lately. So,
yeah, that's a good thing. Same here. What I will say is, those of you who haven't tried it yet, one of the things that I noticed right away is I felt it in my teeth. And, especially when you're you're sort of in, not really the frontal, but the ethmoid, and like sort of the maxillary around their jawbone and around here, your teeth feel it. It's nothing to be alarmed about. It's not going to hurt you. It's very typical. It's just the reaction of the current. But kind of like you said, Colin, it can be sensitive. Certainly works well though. All right. So one of the things, and that's pretty simple. I mean, once you go through there, one final thing is just make sure you're sort of adjusting that output power as needed. And what I mean by that is sometimes when you're going through certain areas, it might be too intense. Make sure you turn it down. So keep in mind, you may not be feeling it as intense from your fingers, but that patient possibly might be. So make sure you turn it down, based on their feedback. Sometimes it could be too much. So just be aware of that. Outside of that, as you're adjusting as needed, then you will go through the, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, as much as they need, up to a 20-minute protocol. And at that point, usually that's probably enough. We do have a few questions here. One coming in before we continue on. Is it possible to do it on yourself or best to have someone else help? Yeah, it's I've tried it on myself. You can do it. It's a little more difficult. Colin, why don't you explain that? Because you said you actually did try it on yourself. I felt a little clunkier.
Yeah, you can definitely do it on yourself if you're in a pinch. I've never had anybody do it to me. I'd imagine it's probably a better experience. Just because, like you said, it's clunky. You're kind of like, it's coming through your fingers and it's also in your face once you touch your face, so it's kind of hard to kind of tell what's going on in here when it's all tingly. At least in my experience, right? So
that's for sure.
Did it help? Did I feel better afterwards? Absolutely. But therapeutically, and if you're a clinician or someone with a PRS that's doing this on a partner, I mean, I think it would definitely be more comfortable just be laying and relaxing and having someone do it for you.
Yeah. And a very similar question here, will you get the same effect? I would say that you could probably get a similar effect. I think one of the reasons, and to me, it's the same thing as like treating myself with anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more difficult to watch the form and kind of like what you said, Colin, to push those numbers that are necessary and stay in that location necessary. When somebody else is doing it, it tends to be a little bit more successful. But if that's your only option to treat yourself, you're going to get results. So
yeah, it's better than not doing it at all.
100% agree. So good question there. And I'll get to this other question in just a moment. I want to continue on with this. So that essentially concludes a very simple sinus protocol. However, along with this, once you learn how to work this one, some of these others turn out to be fun, and there's a lot of benefit to some of these others. So if you're starting to think along the lines of like, wow, if I can do this with sinus, what can I do transferring current to another patient or loved one that could be successful? Well, here you go. Here's another one. I say arthritis in particular, not just any arthritis. I've treated rheumatoid arthritis using this particular protocol, and I found that this one worked better on certain patients with rheumatoid arthritis than the hand bath itself. Probably some of the reasons, I think sometimes the human touch helps. Their loved one would go on their knuckles. A lot of times, they get they essentially get a lot of their inflammation in their, either their fingers or their toes. And essentially all you're doing here is you're transferring, and we did it dry. There was no ultrasound gel. There was no oils. It was essentially just hand on hand, and then going over knuckles in certain inflammation areas and turning up the output power as they can tolerate it. But great results with this. So when I say great results, it reduced the amount of pain that person was going through, during one of their flare-ups. Obviously with rheumatoid, there's other things, there are other factors that kind of go along with it. But for a short treatment for something that you need to do when you had a flare-up, this is a great one, especially if you have access to, a PRS and somebody to kind of administer it with you. So yeah, another good one. Along with that, and again, as you can see, there's only 2 pads here, so you don't need all 4, although you can use 4. I tend to use just 2 at a time. It tends to be a little bit easier, a little less clunky. Here's the other one, massage therapy. Now, why would I talk about this one? Well, what's interesting is we've pushed this one a lot. Surprisingly, the first time I actually did see a massage therapist was with you, Colin. A massage therapist grabbed a hold of it and she went to town. Absolutely loved it.
I believe it.
Kind of works the same way. And it's one of those things where, a massage therapist puts themselves and their body through a lot, whether it's, with their wrists, with their joints, just their body in general. It's very taxing. And to get to certain depths can be difficult. What this is able to do, because it contracts at 245 times per second or 500 times per second using the RX, it has that ability to get to a depth much easier than your hands can do. And what actually happened is the massage therapist noticed that they were able to get certain areas of depth a lot easier with a lot less pressure than they would have if they would have done this just with their hands. I guess and I have felt it myself, but I want to get your feedback on this, Colin. Just, the first time you had a massage with a massage therapist using the PRS, what was your experience with that?
It's awesome. I mean, I feel like getting a massage anytime is great. You add this to the mix and it's, like you said, just the depth that the people are able to get to using their hands. You can feel that it's not natural. It feels like you're getting a massage that's a lot deeper than what you're typically used to. And it's not painful either. It's just, it's your body definitely reacts and elongates and knows how to accept this current, especially when you start going through, some ART or some super simple like range of motion, while the therapist is on certain areas. Yeah, it's great. You get up around the neck and in the cervical area. It's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. I completely agree. And kind of like what you said is, myofascial release sometimes has points where it's intense,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not hurting you. It's getting into certain depths that are loosening it up. This technology kind of working the same way. The beauty of it is it's also helping generate more blood flow into that area. So your recovery time is going to probably be cut in half in that case.
Yeah.
So pretty awesome.
I think it's cool too to think about it from the therapist perspective. Like I think you touched on is, these people their livelihood is their hands and their ability to, apply a lot of pressure through their hands and through their wrists. That's taxing. You're doing massages all day, every day. Doing this is cool because you're helping somebody else, but it's kind of therapeutic for the therapist, right? They're getting that current through their hands. It's going into their knuckles. They can feel it kind of radiating into their wrists and their forearms. So it's almost like every massage that you're giving, you're kind of getting one as well, which is cool.
Yeah, that's a great byproduct I was going to touch on. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up because it's true. It is it's the residual that you're getting that good effect, as opposed to if you're just beating yourself up all day because of massages, you're going to be sore, you're going to be stiff.
Right.
This one's going to give you blood flow and it's going to give you light contractions the whole time. So your wrists will probably actually feel better. At the same time, you also have access to a PRS. So if you are a massage therapist and you don't have one of these, this would be good just to save your career. You just essentially surrounding the wrist and just kind of running blood flow into that area. And of course, on top of all the other protocols, it's great to, maintain that career. Just a fun fact, I wanted to sort of address this, which is one of the reasons I brought this one up. The average lifespan, as far as shelf life of their career of the massage therapist, is between 5 and 8 years. And this is just various reports that I found on the internet. Obviously not a long time to have a career. And most likely this is through injury and burnout. That's what I found in the most part. And, some other factors as well, but a lot of them end up stopping because of injury. And kind of like what you're talking about, Colin, this is going to help reduce a lot of that injury and give them a longer lifespan as far as their shelf life in their career. But at the same time, they're giving their patients a different type of result that you're not going to get in other places.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of a game changer there. Here's a question, just kind of based on the oil. Do you use the oil or ultrasound gel on pressure points? So I will say 100% when it comes to the sinus protocol, I always try to use the ultrasound gel. If there's no access to something else, I will grab any other type of oil that I know has worked in the past. For the most part, it's been kind of rubbing oils that have been given to me over the years. I just don't like them because I'm not, the incense kind of takes away from the treatment, in my opinion. Some people think it adds to it. I don't think you need any of that. However, some people might feel like you do. So, if you have some of those type of like essential oils, that does work because I have used them, and any other type of like oil or water. But again, I do want to stress the ultrasound gel. That is definitely the most successful. And I'm going to just have to address Sam Battaglia, Dr. Sam Battaglia out of the Chicagoland area. I've watched him treat multiple sinus protocols with this. Same with Dr. Brian. And it's always ultrasound gel. And it's just, it's kind of the go-to, just the best results when it comes out to it.
And Jake, as far as on pressure points, specifically, as we're going through, what are you looking for when you're kind of going through it with your hands, if you're, looking at this from a therapist perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with this one, sometimes you might get a reaction of the current, but it's not like your traditional treatment to where you'll see sort of like muscular breakdowns or maybe a different type of muscle firing up. It's at a low sensation. So chances are you're not really going to see a lot of those obvious things. For the most part in this treatment, it's going to be a lot of patient feedback, and it doesn't take long. Their big feedback is like, you got to stop for a second so I can literally blow my nose. I mean, that's what I see 9 times out of 10. And outside of that, it's just a matter of just kind of keeping those pressure points, between 5 and 30 seconds. Probably a happy medium as well. I usually keep it around there 10, 15 seconds and then rotate throughout the entire time. Sometimes I'll give them a break and I'll see if they, if they need to get up for a second, and then we'll go through it again. Here's another question that come. Appreciate all the questions. There's one more thing I want to talk about before, before we close this, but from Dr. M, if you have a dizzy patient and you want to place the pads on their cervical spine to induce the sensation of right rotation, you'd want black on the right and red on the left. Let's see. Let me reread that. If you have a dizzy patient and you want to place the pads on their cervical spine to induce the sensation of right rotation, you'd want black on the right and red on the left. I think I know what you're talking about. And yeah, you can certainly place it black on the right and red on the left. If you're talking dizziness, it doesn't even have to be in that placement. A lot of times, if we're talking with cervical in general, I would probably just go black on the back of the neck, and I would use 2, and I would just kind of run it right with a regular neck protocol and use the 2 reds on the back infraspinatus area. And then that 4th pad would just be grounded on the back of the plastic backing. You can certainly run it this way. But I found more towards a neck protocol would be probably more beneficial. So I don't know, try both. You might see some results this way. I would still probably lean towards the neck protocol placements. What about you, Colin? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like what you said, Jake. I think you're going to be spot on. Oftentimes, like we've seen, is there's kind of a best way to do a lot of these things, but that doesn't make other ways necessarily incorrect.
Correct.
Especially if you're trying to facilitate rotation cervically, I think the movement's going to be more important than the pad placement.
Yeah.
As long as you have the kind of general idea on the pad placement, the movements that they're going to be getting people going through is probably going to yield the best result.
100%. And it's funny you talk about that, because I want to sort of segue into this question I held off on purpose. Who figures out all these protocols? It's so interesting. Great question. And it has a lot to do, Colin, sort of what you said. We start off with a certain stencil of things, and we've always encouraged doctors to go beyond that. It's like, we're going to give you the stencil that we have that has been successful over the years. But once you learn that and you perfect it, make it your own so you can push the envelope and see how much further it goes. And that's essentially how new protocols have been developed.
Yeah.
That's also how we've grown other protocols to be that much more successful, because a doctor, sometimes they'll admit, hey, I messed it up. I put it on the wrong way, and it turned out I had better results. That's why I always say, you didn't mess it up. You just did it differently.
Yeah.
There's better ways to do things. But for the most part, as long as you're following within the guidelines of what this technology can do, and you're not breaking any contraindications, chances are there's no real wrong way to do it. there's just better ways.
Absolutely.
And that's by pushing that envelope.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's been really cool to see, Jake, like the collaboration. We got, dozens on dozens on dozens of clinicians and patients that are using this around the country at this point, and hearing back from them and saying, having someone call you all excited on a Tuesday morning and saying, hey, I did this on a right knee and this on a shoulder and this on an elbow. It worked great, and it's cool because now you get to kind of add that to, like you said, this little protocol library that we continue to build, and kind of creating that community around getting everyone excited about, kind of like you said, continuing to push the envelope of what this thing can do. For me, that's the most exciting part.
Oh, I completely agree. And especially when, you see the results that you've gotten from something that just, you even mentioned today, sometimes, you've sold this for years. You've been a part of this company from the beginning with me. And one of the things you said is like, you're still kind of blown away when it's actually helped you.
Yeah.
So before I go into like the last thing I want to point out, would you mind kind of talking and sharing that story?
Yeah.
I think it's good to hear from people.
Yeah, because we were just talking about it right before we started this. Jake and I were talking about, like with any job, right? You feel uninspired on a Monday morning or whatever, and it's like, I don't want to work today, right? But when you have something like this, and I'm constantly hurting myself, right? I'm always doing things that are, physically demanding and what have you. And I was telling Jake, I tweaked out my knee on Friday afternoon, and by Sunday, I didn't feel like I could walk. I mean, I was like laid up, and by Sunday I was good to go. And today I didn't think about it at all, So it's, you go through a couple of different protocols, like you said, kind of the blueprint of what to do with the device in your hands, and there's no wrong way to do it. But the second I tweak out a knee or an ankle or whatever I do, I know that I have this in my back pocket, and I get home and I throw the PRS on, and I know it's going to be fine unless it's something serious. Right. So it is really cool to be able to, like you said, kind of be a part of a company that you can really truly stand by, like what you're talking about every day. It makes it a lot easier.
The product works well. There's no doubt about it. And what I've learned multiple times over again and again, and it's continued to humble me. Anytime there's like muscle breakdowns or something to do just with blood flow or healing, this is where it hits grand slams. Over and over and over again. Shoulder issues, knee issues, and then of course when it comes to performance and strength, I think everybody knows where I stand on that. So there's definitely going to be another performance protocol, or at least a Q&A coming up. I know someone asked me that last time, so we only did one, and there will be a follow-up to that. But kind of go along with what you said here, Colin, I want to share my screen real quick because I want to show something that last time I think I tried to show, and nobody saw it. So let's see if we can get this done. I want you to be able to see this, and that finally came up. So this is, if you go through here, these are protocols. This is all the performance protocols. There will be more.
Hello, everybody.
But right now, this is we won't force you to watch that nonsense. Right? But that's for performance. But if you also go back, there's a lot of the not treatments, but protocols you can do with the PRS. Everybody. And a lot of these are just things that we have taken from the RX. So they educate on both ends, whether it's the PRS or the RX on a basic level. And it gives you an idea of things that you can kind of go through and help yourself with pain or even performance. That is on our YouTube page at ARPneuro. So make sure you check that out. And then the other thing I want to focus on, let me stop sharing this in just a moment. I want to show the other portion is going into ARPneuro. So again, check out our website. If you have any questions on certain things, here's one I always like to go through is athletes using the ARP. I'm just intrigued by this. I think a lot of time, this is only what I would say 25, 30% of what we have.
Yeah, not even.
We just can't keep up with it, but it's constantly growing, And, you know, some of these have even gone beyond. Sometimes they started with PRSs and then they went to the RX or whatever the case is. They were treating the ankle. Now they're treating something else. We have some athletes using it for performance. So that's a good one to go through. But you can also go into patients, finding a clinic. And of course, here's more on how to use the PRS. So this goes into a lot of protocols right on the website, the most basic on the website, you know, so you don't even have to go to the YouTube page for some of these other things. And you can scroll through and as you can see, there's a lot of things here on how to use this device. So we're taking away a lot of the, I think the difficult tasks that is included with this type of technology, and we're trying to make it as user-friendly and easy as possible. But of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at info@arpneuro.com. And, you know, any other questions on that, you can certainly go to our website. So, Colin, do you have anything you want to add?
Sounds great. The only thing I'll say is all the PRS users out there, don't get overwhelmed by the protocols. You know, focus on one, learn it, and you're going to see how they do all relate. You know, I get it. I'm not the most technical guy in the world. I'll open up a box of something that I ordered and be like, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. It's really not. All right. So it's not as much as you think. And don't be afraid to play around with it either. Like we said, you know, get creative with it, you know, figure out how it works with your body.
Yeah.
And you really can't go wrong. You're not going to hurt yourself. So
yeah, that's a great way to end that. When in doubt, you can always sandwich it and then work your way out from there.
Absolutely.
Colin, thanks for filling in, and
Yeah.
hopefully we had Matt the Maverick maybe give this a shot, and hopefully he could feel better by using this, and we have maybe a success story from him afterwards.
Sounds great. Awesome, Jake. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. Info@arpneuro.com with questions, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.